Here's another one from Venezuela. Why turning on the faucet still feels like a miracle. There's some moment, stupid, small, it's almost embarrassing, that explains Venezuela to a T. Better than any chart, than any report, than any academic paper ever could. Turning on a fucking faucet. Water comes up. Clear water. Sounds simple, right? Yet, for some Venezuelans, something, when they do this act, something inside them relaxes them. It's not relief, it's gratitude. It's the kind of gratitude that arrives uninvited and settles in your chest like a superstition. You watch it for a second longer than necessary, half expecting it to stop, to sputter, to come out brown, to fucking betray you. This is what Chavismo did to the Venezuelan mind. Not ideology, not slogans. Mental, psychological damage and fucking trauma. Here is the collapse that rewired people. Foreign experts love to talk about Venezuela in terms of macroeconomics and geopolitics and GDP, oil dependency, institutional decay. They're all incorrect. They're all correct, but they're all incomplete. What they never measure is how a prolonged collapse rewires a population's expectations of reality. Because you see, when systems fail temporarily, people complain and bitch. But when systems fail permanently, people adapt. When systems fail for decades, people internalize failure as normal. Chavismo didn't just destroy infrastructure, it destroyed baseline assumptions. Electricity was no longer expected. Clean water became episodic. Food availability turned into a logistics puzzle. Medicine became a fucking scavenger hunt. And when these things reappear, although briefly, even briefly, emotional response is not satisfaction, it is awe. That awe is not resilience, it is trauma masquerading as gratitude. Here's the thing. Learned helplessness, Venezuela edition. Psychologists called it helplessness. When repeated exposure to uncontrollable negative events conditions people to stop expecting agency. In Venezuela, this wasn't a clinical phenomenon, it was a civic condition. People stopped planning long-term because long-term stopped existing. You learn to live by contingencies, by rumors, by WhatsApp chains, by the latest blackout schedule, by which cousin knew someone at a pharmacy, by which friend had a goddamn generator. Under these conditions, political language becomes absurd. Public policy is a joke when tomorrow cannot be predicted. Rights are theoretical when enforcement is arbitrary. Reform is meaningless when institution exists only as facades. And the damage that never appears in statistics, and the damage that never leaves. The trauma of the ordinary. Trauma is usually imagined as spectacular. Violence, blood, explosions. In Venezuela, the trauma was often banal. The anxiety of storing water in every container you own. The quiet panic when the lights flicker. The calculation of whether today is worth leaving the house. The normalization of theft as survival. The fear of illness, not because of death, but because treatment might not exist. This kind of trauma does not announce itself. It seeps in. It reshapes habits, humor, relationships. It teaches people not to hope loudly, not to trust systems, not to assume continuity. It also creates a psychological chasm between Venezuelans and those who never lived this way. Not one that no amount of context can bridge. And here is why outsiders miss this shit entirely. Foreign commentators tend to evaluate Chavismo through outcomes they care about. Inequality, the Gini index, redistribution, electoral aesthetics. They ask whether the intent was good, whether the rhetoric resonated, whether the project failed because of external pressure, sanctions, or what have you. Meanwhile, Venezuelans measure Chavismo by entire different metrics. Want to know what those are? Is there power tonight? Does the water run? Does the water not smell funny? Can my mom get her medicine? Can I go out and not get shot? This is why so many defenses of Chavismo feel grotesque to us. They treat collapse as abstract, while Venezuelans experience it as intimate. They debate ideas while Venezuelans negotiate survival. The result is a moral disconnect so wide, it might as well be a different fucking planet or a goddamn galaxy. And this damage travels with you. Here is another part that outsiders rarely seem to comprehend or understand. Leaving Venezuela does not undo this damage. Venezuelans abroad still check for exits. They still hoard supplies. They still feel uneasy in abundance. They still flinch at shortages that others barely notice. They still marvel at function and bureaucracy. They still feel guilty for stability. You don't unlearn scarcity by crossing a border. You carry it with you like an accent you can't shake. And when someone tells you casually, confidently, that Venezuela wasn't that bad, nothing inside you snaps. Not because they're wrong, but because they're erasing the most intimate scars while pretending to be compassionate. You know, the faucet is evidence. It's an everyday thing. So when I say that turning on a faucet feels like a miracle, I'm not being poetic. I'm being precise. That moment contains everything. The collapse of trust, the recalibration of expectations, the conditioning of fear, the long tail of trauma that ideology never accounts for. No revolution that produces this is misunderstood. No system that inflicts this is defensible. No expert who ignores this deserves the word. You can keep your models, keep your theories, and you can keep your slogans. Venezuelans will keep checking the faucet just in case.